Hello everybody, it is apparently a requested video by Al, of course. So this evening, I discovered something that I didn't know about myself. I am deeply and passionately against assault barriers for buses. So I guess we're talking about that today upon request. Vehemently against them is a way you could definitely describe it, I've found. To me, logistically, if you want to become a bus driver and you decide, I'm going to apply to become a bus driver, I would love to be a bus driver, you should expect, yes, expect to be assaulted, yes, full on assault, at least once a year. At least if it's in a big transit system. So it's in one of the major metro areas of the nation in the United States. It's to be expected because that's human beings being human beings. And more so, you're dealing with human beings that are at, because unfortunately the world operates on a hierarchical scale, which it should never be operated on in the first place, but that's how everybody operates. So unfortunately, and especially in the US, when you ride transit, the majority of transit riders are on the bottom two tiers of society. They're at the rock bottom. They're literally the little filter feeding bottom feeders who have to fight over the scraps that get dropped by the people above them on the societal hierarchy scale. That's the main people you are choosing to serve when you become a bus driver or any kind of a transit operator. That's just a fact. And so you have to expect these people, a lot of them to be mentally unstable, others to have bad days, and some to just have general social issues because of the fact that they're on the brink of giving up on life and other things like that. You have to expect that. You're dealing with literally the bottom tiers of humanity here. The dispossessed, the rejected, the dejected, the unappreciated, the unthanked, the people who are given up on by the rest of society, the rest of their peers that are quote unquote above them. That's who you deal with in the mass majority. That's who you choose to serve when you decide to be a transit operator, especially if it's a bus driver. So again, you need to expect to be assaulted. Again, if it's in one of the major systems and one of the major metro areas in the United States, you need to be expected. You need to expect that you're going to be assaulted inevitably. It's an inevitability. You need to be assaulted. You're going to be assaulted at least once a year, at least. You have to expect that. I don't agree with the notion from former or current bus drivers. Al is actually a former bus driver, I think like 30 years or something like that, or 15 years, can't remember how long it was, something like that. We definitely disagree on this, but like I strongly disagree with his stance that there should be protection for drivers. I don't think there should. You take on that responsibility when you become a bus driver. You accept that that's an inevitability. You will probably be assaulted at least once a year by doing that. Especially in TriMet, it's probably more likely 2 to 3 times a year you'll be assaulted as a bus driver. Because that's how many unstable people mentally we have in the area. How many rejected, dispossessed, bottom of the barrel people just barely able to get scrape on by we have in the Portland area. It's an inevitability. You literally, whether you realize it or not, it's like an unwritten agreement and rule that you agree to when you sign up to be a bus driver. You're going to be assaulted. That's just a fact. Is it right? Of course not. Of course it's fucked up. But you have to accept that. That's who you're choosing to serve. I have a major issue also with barriers because of the perception it creates. Whether you realize it or not, the more you're for a full barrier system for bus drivers to protect against assaults, you're saying it passive aggressively. You're putting out the perception, especially to the riders, let alone furthering the negative perception and perpetualization of the image and the thoughts that go with mass transit, but especially buses and bus riders, that bus riders are generally criminal, they're generally careless, heartless, violent, druggies, homeless. They're just the slime of the earth. Those are who ride buses. You're further perpetuating that whether they realize it or not. And you're passive aggressively stating to the riders and to the rest of the world, why you're right. We don't trust riders. Riders are a threat to us. And see, riders, we think you're a threat. That's why we have to have full fucking plexiglass walls or more completely blocking us off into our own fucking room, cubicle, on the bus, so that you can't touch us. You're literally saying that without using the words. That I'm paranoid and terrified of you, my writers that I chose to serve. You're dangerous people. You can't be trusted. The only real danger is having that mentality and supporting the full barriers in that sense. That proves that you and your mindset are the danger. It is not the writers who are the danger there. Because you're setting a very dangerous and bad negative precedent that's already been set wrongfully, and you're actually now casting it across the whole broad net across all writers of every echelon on your system. You're saying, I don't trust any of you people. You're all danger to me. You all endanger me. I can't trust you. So, I'm putting up a wall of defense or protection. And that's entitlement, too. You don't realize that you're being highly entitled, incredibly egotistically arrogant when you do that. It is my 100% immovable position that it's on you when you sign up to be a bus driver. To the extent that if you sign up to become a bus driver and you want the wall, that you should not have been a bus driver in the fucking first place. If anything, if I was running a transit agency, I would vet my potential drivers and say, if you think you need a barrier of some kind, get the fuck out. I'm not even going to consider you. I don't care how qualified you are. I don't care how passionate you are about, oh, I would love to be a bus driver. Get the fuck out. I'll take the person who hates the job before I'll take the person who thinks they need a barrier. Because I'm not willing to let you have that kind of attitude when you know who you're going to be driving. Literally serving. You're choosing to serve the bottom of the barrel of society. The people who the rest of society have rejected and thrown to the side and to the trash bin of the humanity and say, you're not worth my time. And the government does the same because you're not paying almost any tax, if any tax at all, comparative to the middle and higher echelons. So you're not profitable. So why do they care? And you perpetuate this horrible, horrible attitude towards transit systems and transit ridership. You literally actually, in a way, are your own detriment because you're feeding the flames and the infernos of anti-transit sentiment, which are among mainly motorists and richer upper echelons parts of society. You're feeding their fire. You're giving them more cannon fodder to use against your literal employment, your choice job. You're literally firing on yourself. You might as well turn the gun on yourself and shoot yourself. Because it's the equivalent of doing that and then asking, well, how the hell did that happen? Who pulled the trigger? It must have been you. No, it was you. You shot yourself. Congratulations. You're a dumbass. And you don't even fucking realize it. Maybe because you don't want to see it. But it's the truth. Like, you have to be wholly acknowledging, almost like an oath, that you know who you're serving. You know the risks tied to that. One of those is being assaulted while driving. And like I broke down to my mom earlier, further, after that whole Twitter feed going on with that set this whole thing into motion, there's another aspect to it that people, I'm sure, don't look at because they don't, again, people are obsessed with surface value. They don't want to take the time to analyze and break down to minute little details every possible direction aspect you could come at any subject, but especially something like transit, it doesn't happen even with avid transit people. So one other aspect of that you may not consider is the fact that it's not going to change anything. You think, oh, it's going to change a lot. It's going to be much more positive. Because one of the lines of reasoning that most people will use is like, oh, well, assaults are one of the main, if not the primary reason, at least for TriMet, probably a lot of other major ones in the nation, for driver turnover in the industry, as in transit or bus driving. Well, like I said to some of these people tonight, what's your point? Because that logic does not stand on its own. It has no leg to stand on. It's because it's illogical. It's not logical. It's an irrational argument. Because you're going off the basis of, oh, well, it's a high rate of turnover because it does fucks them up mentally being assaulted. It's like, it doesn't matter what industry or what job description it is. Literally, when you get assaulted, it doesn't matter who you are, what age you are, where you are in the world, when you get assaulted, it's going to fuck you up one way or another. That's just a fact. That's basic human psychology, in fact. That's primal emotion and instinct and reaction, self-defense, so on. It can be traumatic. Go figure. That's true across the board. It doesn't matter what your job is. Whether you're from the UAE or the United States or frickin' Iceland. It's a fact. So that aspect of it doesn't even work. Your point is invalid. Because it's illogical, irrational argument. It doesn't work. Oh, the high is a result of a high turnover in our industry. Yeah, it is in any industry. Any job description, anywhere in the world. The more assaults that then end up, the more higher the increasing risk of assault on you as an employee of whatever industry it is, right? The higher that risk goes, the more turnover you're going to have, and thus the less likely people are even going to consider, in the first place, no matter how desperate they are, working in that industry or that job description. That's an inevitability. But that's literally any job description, any industry. Not just transit operators. Thus again, what's your point? Which is literally what I said to those arguments from that person. What's your point? As in, you don't have a point. Your point immediately implodes on itself because it's invalid. It does not exist because it's irrelevant. It is illogical. It is irrational. You have an irrational argument. Congratulations. It doesn't change anything. And so in the long run, it really doesn't change anything to have a barrier. Because it's all about the safety issue. Like, yeah, obviously, if you get assaulted or somebody grabs your arm or your fucking long sleeve, if you're wearing one of those as a transit operator while you're driving a fucking bus, that's incredibly potentially deadly. Go figure. But guess what? You have the barrier there now. These people are unhinged enough and dumb enough and I don't know, unhinged enough mentally, broken enough mentally, that they're gonna be that determined to try to grab you and assault you, do something like that. Then they're gonna continue to scream, yell, and hoop and holler and beat the living shit out of your barrier now. And guess what? That's too big of a risk. That's too dangerous as well for not just the riders, but you as the operator of the bus, because of the fact that guess what? You're distracted. When you're getting screamed at and yelled at right there on the other side of the barrier, and you're getting just smashed by these people just like throwing themselves against it and beating the little shit out of it, giving you every hooking you can imagine, head smashes. You can't drive through that. No matter how stubborn and like how supposedly great you are ignoring, you cannot drive through that. In fact, I guarantee that's probably illegal, because it's illegal to drive a normal car by yourself if you have too much distraction, as in noise or visual or otherwise. You have all form of distraction at once. Physical, vocal or audible, and visual. You have every form of distraction. You can't drive your bus. So congratulations. And instead, now, you voluntarily, whether you realize it or not, literally boxed yourself in and imprisoned yourself. So now you're stuck there until whenever the fuck this person decides to give up. It doesn't change a damned thing to have a barrier. It literally makes no fucking difference. Therefore, again, having a barrier is illogical in the fucking first place. It's like, oh, well, it prevents us from at least being hit and having bruises and potentially being traumatized. It's a different form of trauma. There may be a few less drivers that will be traumatized, or at least as traumatized as they would be if they were physically assaulted, but it's still technically an assault. It still has the emotional and negative impacts, so you're still going to get traumatized. On top of that, now you're stuck. You can't get out of that situation, because you have to go through the person. You have to open the door willingly, which could then open you to assaults physically. Guess what? You're literally stuck there. These kinds of people, the people who will reach around a barrier, or take advantage of no barrier and assault you or pull on you and try to pull you out of the seat, whatever it is, are literally just going to continue to do it through a barrier. So it doesn't matter if it's a half barrier like most TriMet buses have now, or it's going to be the full barriers that like various other places in the US like DART has down in Dallas. It doesn't fucking matter. These barriers that I'm showing you now make literally no difference whatsoever. When people are that way, they're usually mentally off. And at that point, they're also therefore triggered. And so at that point, they're going to take it out on whoever the fuck they're going to take it out on. If they were already going to take it out on you with or without a barrier, they're going to take it out on you with a barrier. It's not going to fucking matter. And in fact, on top of that, with people like that, and I know this from personal experience, by the way, as a kid, let alone having family members in this position, if somebody's already pissed off, and they're mentally unhinged and unstable in that moment, and they're determined, you're only pissing them off more by trying to ignore them, or trying to reason with them, or, and especially, if you put a literal physical barrier in the way. If you try to pull that person away, if you try to hold them back, if you try to blockade them, you're only going to enrage them more. You're only going to make them more determined, and that much more livid, and that much more vicious, and that much more angry, and that much more spiteful, and that much more vengeful, and that much more determined to beat the living shit out of you, and scream their top of their lungs, tearing you to pieces. It will not make a difference. And if it does make a difference, it's probably more negative than positive. And that's just a fact. Because that's humanity you're dealing with. And you're dealing with, again, the rejected portion of society, of humanity. The bottom tiers, the bottom levels, the scrap feeders, basically. That's who you deal with when you choose to serve them as a bus driver. Plain and fucking simple. So none of those arguments work. And in the end, it's just something that I find really fucking annoying. Especially considering you already have a hard enough time understanding each other, operator, so driver to passenger, and vice versa, with all the fucking traffic. And the rider noise, talking and chatter and everything else, right? You have all this other fucking noise. You already have a challenge of hearing each other and understanding each other. And now, you add on top of that, talking through a thick, like a half to 1 inch thick fucking plexiglass? Top to, roof to, or, ceiling to fucking floor, dashboard to fucking, Narnia. It just doesn't make sense. It's just frustrating at that point. And also, again, it just makes me immediately want to emphasize what I started with, which was, again, the perception it creates. You're literally demeaning the people you're supposedly serving as a bus driver by having that barrier there. You're literally choosing to demean them. They're already demeaned. They're already attacked. They're already hated. They're already distrusted. They're already talked like they're shit and like they're career, lifelong criminals because, oh, they're this, or oh, they're that, or oh, they're going to contaminate this, or oh, they... And now you want to have a fucking barrier there. Because that's literally, without using words, that's action. That's a physical thing that literally reflects how you really feel. Which is, you're a threat to my safety. I don't like you. I don't trust you. I only do this because I want to get my paycheck and go home. Or I like the vehicle. Or all those things are just listed. Minus you. That's really fucked up. It's so fucked up. It's so fucked up. It's so immoral and wrong to me. And yeah, it's obviously any assault is a felony. So the signs that are in every bus ever in the U.S. that says, "Oh, it's a felony to assault an operator, a blank operator." It's an assault. It's a felony to assault anybody. Whoop-de-doo, like that. There's actually a weird form of self-entitlement that transit systems have. Because it's specifically their drivers that it's a felony for. It's not anyone else. Another rider, no. No, it's literally a felony. It's a felony for the drivers because it's a felony to do it to anybody else. I could go on forever about this, and I'm not going to. So I made my fucking point. I won't be moved, at least not for a long time on this. You know what? I'll go add one more perspective to this from my point of view, or from somebody who comes from a similar line of thought. So, you might have the reasoning of assault, being a thing and being traumatizing, whatever else. Okay. So you know you're taking on the risk of being assaulted if you decide you want to be a bus driver. Congratulations. You've discovered you can be assaulted if you're a bus driver. Okay. So you think you need a barrier because you might be assaulted. Well, when you're walking, why not fight for a barrier for yourself then? Because the riders are a stranger to you and you to them. But they're a threat. But as soon as you're not behind the wheel of a transit bus, you're not under threat when you're just walking home by the same strangers. You can almost see the entitlement that I'm expressing in that. Because you're thinking, it's almost like you don't realize it's kind of a weird roundabout way. You could argue you think you're real fucking special. You think you're really something. That like, oh, well yeah, it's because I am a bus driver, a transit operator, that I am in danger of being assaulted by strangers. But as soon as I'm out from behind the wheel and not in a bus anymore, well, I'm no longer at risk anymore, at least not as high of risk. That's horseshit, and you fucking know it. That's unreasonable, because it's irrational and illogical argument yet again. Because you seem to be full of them. That's just yet another one. Add it to the fucking endlessly growing list of excuses you have that are irrational arguments. That's yet another one. Because I just stated the fact of the reality of that situation. At that point, by logic, you should be always having some sort of protective defensive barrier. Because you still could be shot, stabbed, sliced, punched, kicked, shoved by some stranger at some point that decides to do it to you. Literally at any point. It's the same logic of like, okay, well, at any point somebody could shoot me. Whether it's accidental or intentional. So, I decided, for safety, I gotta wear Kevlar. Bulletproof vests. For the rest of my life. Including when I sleep. Or at the very least, when I go out of my house or apartment. Because, well, there's a chance I could get shot. And I can't take that chance. That's endangerment. And I'm paranoid about this because I'm really fearful, it's really, the incidents of shootings are going up. Same with misidentifications and being shot and killed by random strangers. So I'm going to permanently wear Kevlar now every time I go out of my house. I'm going to wear bulletproof vests. Make sure you wear bubble wrap, and if you have kids, you make sure all your kids always have bubble wrap on. And you might as well make sure they have something like Kevlar too on their feet because, well, if they're truly allowed to be a kid, they might decide to jump off bridges into rivers in the summer. And you don't want them to accidentally cut their feet open or step on a rusted, bolt or something that came out or broke on the bridge of the truss that they're going to jump off of into the river. So you got to protect against that because that's a risk, and that seems to be going up a lot, right? You better never drive your car again because your car might actually kill you too because, the amount of frickin' carjackings and car accidents have been skyrocketing too in the country. So your risk of getting in an accident is that much higher. Same with road rage, right? Deadly road rage included. You might as well never drive again. Because that's the same line of logic you're trying to use for why you need a full fucking barrier across your entire fucking driver area of your bus. Thus furthering my point of why I'm right and you're wrong about this. You should not support having barriers at all, but if you're going to have barriers at all, you might as well have exactly the ones that TriMet have, the half-assed ones. Because, like I told people, at the very least, you have some protection. You're guaranteed to be protected from the average-sized person with the average wingspans from actually being able to truly assault you, unless you're like really far forward, then you're kind of screwing yourself over and putting yourself at risk at that point. So why have the barrier? Because you're technically choosing to be further in front where the barrier is now lower. Either way, the point is, it's going to prevent, most of the time, the average person from being able to reach you, at least for a true assault. Now, they can make physical contact with you, but they can't truly assault you. Now, somebody of my size, yeah, I could probably relatively easily reach you with a half punch. I probably couldn't punch you completely, but I could probably hit you with at least a half hook. Yeah, because I have a pretty fucking big wingspan, and I'm also over average height. I'm 6'2". But how many people are actually, like, above 5'10", and have a wingspan maybe greater than 6 feet? And that's the whole fucking arms across your back. That's not just one arm. Now you have to reach with the whole fucking arm, and you have to lean around and go around the fucking barrier? You can't be assaulted. Not unless you're that far forward and you like to lean towards where the riders get on. You can't be assaulted. You can be touched, but you can't be assaulted. So, like, if you have to have barriers at that point, reasonably, there's your compromise. Your concession. We'll give you a barrier, but it's going to be what you consider to be a joke. Half-assed. Because the average person is not going to be able to assault you. They can touch you, but they can't assault you. They can reach around, you know. If they're extremely agile, they have a big enough wingspan, and they have great precision with their agility, then maybe they can snake their way around the barrier and land a bit of a hit on your thigh. Beyond that, you're fine. You'll be touched, but you won't be able to be assaulted. Like, I think that's a perfect compromise. Just accept what you have now. I don't know. Like I said, I could go on forever about this. And I know that, like, probably Al's still going to disagree with me completely on this. That's fine. But no, I cannot be moved from my position on this. And deeply, it's like my literal vehement disdain for trolley buses. You cannot change that about me. I will never let you do that. You would literally have to slaughter me. You would literally have to kill me to change that. To get me to not have these stances or opinions on these things. That's how venomous and immovable of an object I am on these things. So, but that's fine, because everybody has their weird things that they get obsessed with and they like can't be moved on. This happens to be some of mine. So with that said, then again, who knows? Maybe I'll be surprised and I'll find out that a lot of people like 7 people max on average watch these videos, but however many people watch this, maybe I might actually have been reasonable enough to people to make them see, at least from my perspective, and understand, like, okay, now I see where you're coming from. Maybe I'll be surprised by that, but I doubt it. Especially, you know, long-time transit operators, whether they're current or former. I guarantee probably none of you will ever still agree with me and my stance on this at all. And you might even think that what my reasoning is the illogical one, even though I think yours is the one. And therefore, again, we'll never get anywhere with each other, so why even start? Cool! Okay, perfect. Oh wait, because it's America and the internet exists. I guess we have to go into a Twitter war now. Or something. Cancel each other. Anyway. Enough talking. Stay safe out there. Have a great day night wherever you are. And yeah. That's it from this pinhead. See you next time, whatever the hell it might be. God help us all. Sayonara, bitch! I get my first taste today of experiencing riding on a Max shuttle after waiting 30 minutes. Actually, it was supposed to be waiting for a Max shuttle. Finally, a train came 30 minutes later, going westbound to Hawthorne Farm, and now I'm waiting at Hawthorne Farm for probably equal amount of time, at least 30 minutes, because both the last 2 eastbound train runs have been canceled, so I'm getting my first taste of both situations. Feeling operator shorts. This fucking sucks. I need to go pee, goddammit. I'm out of water. Playing basketball all day. All day. 2 hours. And of course, there's been 3 westbound trains. There probably is going to be a 4th before any eastbound comes by. Because TriMet. Giggity.